Let me tell you something strange, perhaps even radical, about silence in the digital age. We live in a world saturated with visibility, a world where almost everything is shared, documented, and displayed: birthdays, coffee cups, sunsets, tears, laughter, even pain, carefully dressed up with filters and poignant captions. We are the most observed generation in human history. Yet, amidst this cacophony of self-expression, some people stay completely invisible. There are people who exist online, but only as ghosts in the machine. They scroll quietly, they observe deeply. They might like your photo, they might read your update, but they rarely, if ever, post themselves. You might know someone like that. Maybe you are someone like that. And here's the question that always lingers in the minds of those who live more publicly. Why? Why would someone choose to stay unseen when the whole world seems to be shouting desperately for attention? Others look at them and make assumptions. They think they are simply shy, deeply introverted, secretive, or perhaps even arrogant, too good to participate in the mundane sharing of life. But that's not the full picture. It rarely is. Beneath the surface of that digital silence, there's an entire psychology at play, one that speaks volumes about human nature, self-perception, and the quiet rebellion against a culture obsessed with visibility. What is truly happening inside the mind of a person who actively chooses invisibility? When we analyze the phenomenon of digital invisibility, the first manifestation we observe is not absence, but control. See, for some people, silence is not emptiness, it's agency. It's the power to choose what the world doesn't get to know, what it cannot access, judge, or consume. Whether we admit it or not, social media has subtly, yet profoundly, reshaped how we define ourselves. The culture rewards display, it praises noise, it incentivizes performance. In this environment, those who stay in the shadows often become the most acute observers. This is the second manifestation: heightened introspection and observation. They watch without needing to interrupt. They process information without the immediate need to react publicly. They analyze the performance of others before judging the person. Psychologists have found something fascinating here. People who refrain from posting frequently, especially self-focused content, often score higher on traits like self-restraint and emotional independence. Crucially, they tend to be less influenced by social comparison and the need for external validation. In other words, they aren't trying to prove who they are to an audience. They're trying to understand it for themselves. And in a world drowning in performances, that level of self-containment is rare. This leads to the third, perhaps most significant manifestation: a resistance to identity crafting. Because let's be honest, most of what we post is not just communication, it's curation. It's an unconscious audition for belonging and approval. Every filtered photo, every witty caption, every status update is a statement that says, "This is who I am. This is how I want to be seen. Do you approve? Am I enough?" But when you stop posting, when you remove yourself from that feedback loop, something fundamental shifts. You begin the difficult process of detaching your worth from digital applause. You stop thinking in captions. You stop framing your life for a lens. You start experiencing moments for yourself again, rather than as content to be consumed. And that's the secret psychology behind many people who don't post. They crave authenticity in a space where everything feels increasingly staged and artificial. It's not that they hate social media universally. It's that they can't find their true selves within its current structure. It's not about being anti-technology or anti-social. It's about refusing to reduce the complexity of a human life into easily digestible highlights. Because when you've seen how easy it is to manipulate perception online, you start valuing what can't be posted: the messy reality, the depth, the imperfection, the unfiltered truth. To understand why someone would actively choose silence, we must look deeper at the psychological motivations driving this choice. It is not a singular cause, but a constellation of reasons. For some, the decision not to post comes after a period of performance burnout. Maybe they once did share everything: their achievements, their relationships, their meals, until one day, it stopped feeling real. It started feeling like work. They realized that every time they shared something beautiful or vulnerable, they felt an invisible pressure to maintain that image, to keep outdoing it. They weren't living anymore. They were curating a character. They were performing their identity rather than inhabiting it. So, they quit. Quietly. Often without a grand announcement or a digital detox declaration. Just a slow, intentional disappearance from the feed. This withdrawal is a defense mechanism against the commodification of the self. It is a survival strategy to protect authenticity in an artificial environment. A second major motivation is the protection of what psychologists call psychological ownership. This is the feeling that something belongs deeply and intimately to you, a thought, a precious memory, a profound experience, a relationship. Research suggests that when you post something online, that sense of intimate ownership fades, even just a little. The moment is no longer just yours. It becomes shared property. It is opened up to the gaze of others, open to judgment, misinterpretation, indifference, or even mockery. So, people who don't post are often fiercely guarding their sense of ownership over their own lives. They are protecting their inner world from colonization by public opinion. They keep their moments untouchable, private, and pure. And maybe that's not withdrawal or sadness. Maybe it's a quiet, profound kind of freedom. A third motivation is rooted in the rejection of conditioned behavior. Think about it. When was the last time you experienced something meaningful and didn't feel the reflexive urge to share it? That reflex, that need to display, is not natural. It is conditioned. It's the product of years of likes, shares, and dopamine loops, training our brains to equate validation with value, visibility with existence. When someone steps outside that system, it can feel like a rebellion against the very fabric of modern social life. They start rediscovering the simplicity and the joy of doing things for their own sake. Cooking without photographing it, traveling without tagging it, feeling without explaining it. In that space, free from the pressure to perform, a kind of self-awareness awakens that doesn't need an audience to confirm its reality. But we must be careful not to overly romanticize this digital silence. Not everyone who doesn't post is doing it from a place of peace, introspection, or quiet rebellion. Silence online doesn't always mean serenity offline. Sometimes it hides exhaustion, anxiety, or fear. This is the shadow side of invisibility. For many, the choice to remain unseen is driven by the fear of judgment, rejection, or being profoundly misunderstood. Social media has amplified a subtle, pervasive form of anxiety that psychologists call self-presentational pressure. It's the constant, exhausting awareness that you are being watched, analyzed, and evaluated, Devon, when you logically know you might not be. They worry that what they post might be misread, misinterpreted, or worse, completely ignored, which in the digital age often feels like a confirmation of insignificance. So, they retreat. The silence here is a defense mechanism. It's not because they don't want to connect, but because the emotional cost of visibility feels too high. They want to be seen, but only truly and authentically, not superficially, and the current landscape often doesn't allow for that nuance. Another significant cost is the exhaustion that comes from consumption, even without participation. For many, social media became a place where they once sought connection but ended up feeling drained and inadequate. There's a subtle emotional fatigue that comes from constantly witnessing everyone's highlight reels while you're still trying to navigate your own messy behind the scenes. You start comparing, even when you don't mean to. You start questioning your worth, your progress, your life choices, even when you know better. Eventually, some people decide to step away, or at least stop contributing to the noise, not out of bitterness, but out of self-preservation. They realize they don't owe the world a performance. They don't owe an explanation for their silence. And they don't need to keep proving they're happy, successful, or interesting just to be believed. And ironically, sometimes the quietest people online have the loudest, most complex thoughts in their minds. They're not absent. They're overflowing. They just choose stillness instead of spectacle, depth instead of display. The path toward embracing this digital quietness is one of profound self-acceptance and a redefinition of value. It begins with understanding the mechanisms at play, particularly how our brains process validation. Every time we post something online and it gets attention, likes, comments, hearts, our brain releases dopamine, the neurotransmitter involved in reward and addiction. Over time, we begin to crave that validation. We start prioritizing shareable experiences over real, present ones. Now, imagine someone who consciously resists that loop, someone who deliberately chooses to disconnect from the dopamine cycle. That's not disinterest, that's discipline. It takes significant self-awareness to resist a system explicitly designed to keep you hooked and performing. People who achieve this often develop a strong internal locus of control. This is a psychological term meaning their sense of worth, happiness, and direction comes from within, not from external approval. They don't need the digital echo of "you're enough" to believe it. They cultivate that belief internally. The benefit of this shift is significant. Studies show that people who take long breaks from posting or consuming social media content often experience a measurable increase in emotional stability and life satisfaction, because when your sense of identity is no longer being constantly mirrored back to you through the distorted lens of the internet, it becomes solid. It becomes real. You're no longer editing your life into something digestible and aesthetically pleasing. You're living it in all its messy, beautiful, unfiltered complexity. And maybe that's the real rebellion today, to stay whole in a world that rewards fragments. This path also involves reclaiming intimacy with the self. That's one of the quiet truths of this generation. We've confused visibility with value. We assume that to matter, we must be noticed, but real meaning doesn't always need witnesses. Some of the most profound moments of your life, the ones that truly shape who you are, will happen without a single person watching. No cameras, no captions, no audience, just you. And maybe that's what those who don't post understand best. They know that privacy is not loneliness, it's intimacy with yourself. Because when you stop broadcasting every thought, you start hearing your own again. You start reconnecting with the parts of you that got lost in the noisier, quiet desires, your unspoken fears, your inner compass. When psychologists talk about authentic self-expression, they emphasize congruence, the alignment between who you are inside and who you show to the world. But in the age of filters and branding, that alignment is constantly distorted. So when someone chooses not to post, it might be their way of staying congruent, of preserving that fragile truth. There is a deep philosophical undertone to this silence. In a world that constantly demands, "Look at me," choosing invisibility becomes a powerful form of self-definition. It's saying, "I exist beyond your perception of me. My reality is not dependent on your witnessing it." This is where the paradox lies. Social media was designed to connect us, yet it often leaves people feeling more isolated and fragmented than ever. When you don't post, you stop chasing superficial digital closeness and often start rebuilding real, substantive connections. You begin noticing who checks in on you without the need for a status update. You learn who remembers you without digital reminders. That kind of connection, raw, unbroadcasted, quiet, feels heavier, warmer, and infinitely more real. And the people who don't post, they often prioritize living in that space. They build relationships that don't need photographic proof. They understand something most do. Not everything you experience is meant to be witnessed by the masses. Sometimes the most profound things in life, deep growth, private grief, quiet transformation, happen unseen and unseen. When you've lived through enough of those private transformations, you start realizing that being unseen is not the same as being insignificant. In fact, invisibility is where true identity is formed, not performed. Some people say, "If you didn't post it, did it even happen?" But the truth is, the things that shape you most rarely make it to the feed. Your private victories, your quiet acts of kindness, they live in memory, not media. And that is enough. There's a quiet confidence that comes from not needing to be known by everyone, just deeply understood by a few. They know that some parts of you deserve to remain untouched by algorithms and opinions, because once something becomes public, it stops being purely yours. So the next time you notice someone who never posts their photos, don't assume they're hiding or empty. Maybe they're just living. Maybe they found peace in the quiet corners of existence, the ones not lit by the blue glow of a screen. Maybe they the ones who remembered what the rest of us forgot, that being unseen doesn't mean being alone, and being quiet doesn't mean being silent, that sometimes the truest expression of who you are is found in what you choose not to share. Because in the end, we're not meant to be performances, we're meant to be people. And the people who don't post, they remind us of that every quiet, unfiltered, beautifully invisible day.